Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Time for another show. And, of course, time also for Bill to tweet us from Portland, Maine to let us know what we're doing for today's show. Because, no reason why I should have any idea. Let's find out. I like taking my marching orders this way. It's great. I wish the whole show ran this way. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Today, Republicans have a secret plan to lure me, Kagro X, away from the most dangerous microphone in America. Oh, jeez. I guess that's that one. All right, I got worried, so I backed up a little bit. Well, anyway, the most dangerous microphone in America, I guess it's just hyperbole, by installing him as Speaker of the House. Will he take the bait? Let's find out. That's true. That's an offer that's on the table at this point. I'm considering it, as you know. No one has made the offer, or at least no one has made it audibly at this point. But I know they're thinking it. Deep down inside, that's what they want to do. Yeah, some chatter, something we forgot to discuss from over the weekend, that once again, folks are talking about the possibility of Republicans, should they take back the House, in order to own the libs, I suppose, and ensure that they have no effective leadership whatsoever during the coming Congress, because they had, just as what did we decide, that something, nature abhors a vacuum and leadership will emerge from that. They abhor leadership. So they figure they're even with vacuums, I suppose. Anyway, it's a topic of discussion. I don't think it's particularly serious, but it is annoying and worrisome because these guys really might do it because they're that dumb. And it's, so it's a little bit worrying that they might think that, hey, that's awesome, and we could totally own the libs with that. I don't know that that's something that Trump himself is actually interested in beyond the idea of people talking about making him a powerful figure again. I believe I saw Greg tweeting about it this morning, as a matter of fact, and saying, well, he's not really interested in it because, well, for one thing, they're disavowing their interest in it. Which makes sense, but as Greg was pointing out, the job is actual work, and you really have to do things and be able to run everything, run a legislative program, and understand the rules of the House in order to do the job yourself. There is, of course, the possibility that he may take the job because it sounds powerful, it has ceremonial power, and in fact, some real power out there, which he might be interested in exercising from time to time, and then hand off the day-to-day work to Kevin McCarthy or whoever the majority leader is and say, you take care of all the other things. I will object out loud if you do something that I don't like, at which point you will be expected to turn on a dime and do things my way. But I don't know how that goes over as an offer, but I'm sure that would be his expectation. But as you all know, you don't have to actually be a member of the House in order to be elected as Speaker of the House. If they're willing to do it, they can do it. It doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution that you have to be a member of the House, although they were floating that possibility too, that he run for a seat in Florida, a congressional seat from Florida, and that he would overwhelmingly win such a seat. And I'm sure it wouldn't even matter to his constituency if they were willing to elect him that he lived in Mar-a-Lago and everybody knew it. And the person who most famously lived outside of the district that they ran for, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure that wouldn't bother them. And he might even go through the trouble of renting an apartment somewhere inside the district in order to claim that that was his residence. But I'm not even sure he would bother doing that. But yeah, I was surprised by the plan the first time I saw it, only because, well, for one thing, it was Steve Bannon, I think, who was floating it, or someone, or just reacting to someone else's having floated it, and noting that they were saying, well, yeah, he could run and win for Congress here in any district in Florida because we just believe that stuff about ourselves. There are certainly some districts which he actually would win, but I thought, right away, leave it to Donald Trump to have served as president for 4 years, as president, the actual, we gave him the power and everything, the nuclear button, the whole bit. President of the United States for 4 years, never learned that you wouldn't even have to run for Congress and deprive that district of any effective leadership in Congress by occupying its seat. Not that the other people who would be likely to win the seat would be any more likely to provide leadership in Congress, but you get the idea. He wouldn't even have to go through that trouble in order to grab the ceremonial power that he might be craving. And he probably would end up doing all this extra stupid work and spending extra stupid money when he could get somebody else to occupy that seat and deal with that. Oh, I got to talk to constituents. But he wouldn't even have to. That's, I guess, what it really comes down to. Anyway, it was discussed over the weekend, and I guess they actually asked Kevin McCarthy about it. He was on one or another of the Sunday talk shows, I assume. I don't watch those, and we don't even really listen to reports of what happened on them for the most part at this point. They're pretty irrelevant. But at any rate, he made an appearance on one of the shows, and I should dig this up because the video of his response to the question of what do you think about this idea of Trump as Speaker of the House, which is a pretty wild one, and must have bothered him to no end because, of course, he is minority leader, Republican leader, and if the Republicans were to win back the House, he would be usually under ordinary circumstances, he would be the presumed new Speaker of the House. The Republicans would elect the leader that successfully brought them to retake the House to the Speaker's position. Kevin McCarthy is kind of a real nothing burger as a leader, so it's entirely possible that the Republicans, were they to win back the House, might just throw him over and say, who cares? None of us credit McCarthy with bringing us back to majority status. We credit somebody else with that. And probably they would credit Trump with that. And they might very well be interested in making him, some sort of party leader position. But I doubt that anybody who's actually done the work of getting to Congress would want to give away the power of the speakership to Donald Trump. They might not be at all averse to taking it away from Kevin McCarthy. And they might not even want it to come to rest on their shoulders. But they probably wouldn't want to just hand it to somebody who wasn't even a member of the House and who pretty clearly had no understanding of how the House actually worked. So I think it's a long shot, to say the very least, but it's also something so shockingly dumb that they might actually do it. But McCarthy was on the show, whichever one it was, and they asked him, what do you think about this? And he's the one that stands to lose the most from it. And he's but he's giving the answer, and I don't know what happens to him. I mean, maybe he just flubs it, verbally, but he has to both answer the question in a way that makes it clear that, well, of course I still want to be Speaker and I still expect to be Speaker, but I also need to, I can't be on record saying no to Donald Trump, or else his most rabid fans will insist, whether or not they make Trump Speaker in the next Republican House, they will just reject me as Speaker. And somebody else who might be a Trump loyalist, more of a Trump loyalist, or perceived for the moment as being more of a Trump loyalist for 10 seconds. If it's the right 10 seconds, they'll just make that person Speaker of the House instead. So he's doing this balancing act, and it comes out verbally. He's asked, what do you think about this idea of Trump becoming Speaker? And he's saying, his office is saying what he was trying to say was, I've talked to President Trump many times, and he wants me to be Speaker. That's all a very funny thought, but really he wants me to be Speaker. But I don't know what happens to him. Like he's hedging his bets or what. So he ends up saying, so he flubs the words and combines me to be Speaker. He wants me to be Speaker, and the words he wants to be Speaker. And ends up saying, I've talked to President Trump many times, and he wants to be Speaker. And you're like, what did you just say? He wants to be Speaker? he wants me to be speaker. His office said that's what they want. I was trying to say that, but none of them are really hard words. You know what I mean? So it seemed a little iffy to me, like he literally, even at that moment, couldn't make up his mind what to say, even though I'm pretty sure he had it in his head that he definitely wanted to say that he thought that Trump wanted him to be speaker. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it struck him as how implausible the whole thing was. Not that Trump should be made speaker, but that anybody watching a Sunday TV show with Kevin McCarthy on it was probably watching to hear him say great things about Donald Trump or get angry at him if he didn't say enough great things about Donald Trump. And, you know, he might have realized that and just got nervous at the last second. I really don't know what was going on in his head because there's so little going on there as it is. It's a rare occurrence that anything is happening in, inside that little melon. And he's not a smart guy, and he doesn't generally, as far as I can tell, see the big picture about anything. The biggest picture I think he saw there was, I really don't know what to say to this question because I don't want to offend the big guy. Anyway, that's out there. There's plenty of other things to catch up on today, Tuesday, the day that Chuck Schumer in the Senate has insisted on bringing, well, when he speaks to the press, he says bringing the voting rights legislation, S1, to the floor. But of course, what will be going on is almost certainly a cloture vote. As I understand it, it would be a cloture vote on the motion to proceed to the bill. And I didn't really have to read anything in order to figure that out. I mean, there's very little question what's going on here. The Republicans will fight tooth and nail and filibuster to make sure that there's no progress made whatsoever on that bill. So I'm sure, since the only ways that a bill can be brought to the floor in the Senate are either by unanimous consent or by a motion to proceed to that bill, they're definitely not going to get unanimous consent out of it, so Schumer's going to have to make a motion to proceed to the bill. The motion to proceed is debatable. If it's debatable, that means it's filibusterable, or as we say, subject to the filibuster, and that the Republicans will do that. So I've seen a couple people trying to clean up the nuance of things out there in Twitter land, and they're quite correct. This will be a debate on whether or not to start debate on the bill S1. We won't be on debate. This is not really supposedly technically debate about the bill. I mean, that's what people spend their time debating when they debate the motion to proceed to a bill. But what will happen today is a vote, probably largely along partisan lines, on whether or not to declare to the world that the thing that they're actually doing right now when they're talking about S1 is debating it. It's ironic, it's weird, it's upside down and backwards, especially for all the people who are defending the filibuster. Of course, there's no mention of the word filibuster in the rules, and it's not a real thing. According to the rules, it is just extended debate. And, of course, it's somewhat funny, and on the other hand, somewhat troubling, that this is all about extended debate over whether or not to engage in, well, or to start debate. How can that even be what's going on? But that's the way the Senate rules have left us here. We're stuck in extended debate, of which there will be very little. And the people who are filibustering the bill, i.e. demanding extended debate, are actually saying, no, we don't want to start debate. You can't extend a debate that hasn't started, but okay. Well, you understand the inherent contradiction in all of this. It's a nonsensical position, but that's the position they'll be holding. Joan McCarter will be here later on today, and it may be that that's all she wants to talk about. That may be that she says, look, we all know what's going to happen. Let's talk about something else. We'll leave that door open for her and follow up on a couple of other things. But there are plenty of choices for directions. I personally would like to go back to the weirdness that we missed out on yesterday, trying to explain the origin of the absolutely stupid sounding and, well, stupid in substance, Italy-gate elections conspiracy theory and talk about the weirdo Republican Virginia people who have aligned themselves with the Florida people to try to promote this thing. But I feel like there are a couple other things that we might want to at least touch on before we get there. Let's see. One of which will be this Daily Beast piece, which I think we can get through rather quickly, or maybe even just talk about the headline and leave it at that. Trump wanted his Justice Department to stop what? Stop the steal, of course. It was plenty of stories about Trump pressuring his Justice Department to overturn the election, to sue, to have electoral slates from various states thrown out and overturn the election. But that's not what this is. Plenty of Department of Justice officials, there's another report about yet another one, naming them by name, saying that they were ready to resign rather than do this thing. And the truth is, it didn't come to fruition. So I suppose we, should credit people in the Justice Department for standing up against such a thing. But really, if it was the elections case, it was the end of the Trump administration, and they probably just should have said, that's it, I'm out of here, I resign. But even beyond that, I mean, most of them didn't do it because they were career officials and they wanted to stay on for the next administration. And they have very limited power to actually simply declare, this man's crazy, get the net, lock him up. But we could have used a little bit more noise about this stuff. Instead, we get exposés printed in the papers 6 months after the fact, but at least we get that. But no, that's not even what this story is about. The Daily Beast has a new tack. Trump wanted his Justice Department to stop Saturday Night Live, from teasing him. How about that? I mean, we probably all guessed that he was angry about it. And I don't know, we might have even had fantasized about his, running around the White House ranting and raving and saying, call the Attorney General, I want them all arrested. But nobody really believed that it was happening, except thanks to the reporting power of Aswin Subsang and Adam Ronsley. One day I really should just contact him and ask, how do you pronounce your name? Aswin Subsang. Am I right or am I wrong? But I don't know. Maybe at this point it's just better left as a mystery. But anyway, Trump wanted his Justice Department to stop Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live, he said, amounted to nothing less than unfair news coverage and Dem commercials. Trump tweeted in 2018, pondering whether his thought should be tested in courts. Can't be, this whole thing, I guess he figures, can't be legal. That's the actual extent of Donald Trump's, intellectual prowess. This is really what went on in the head of the President of the United States during his term in office, which really is rather disturbing. It was the middle of Donald Trump's presidency. The piece begins, and he was yet again mad at Saturday Night Live, and he wanted the federal government to help him settle the score. In March of 2019, the then President of the United States had just watched an episode of the long-running, liberal-leaning NBC sketch comedy series. It wasn't even a new episode, by the way. It was a rerun. And grew immediately incensed that the show was gently mocking him. I don't know which episode it was and how gentle the mocking was, but that's the way it's put here. It's truly... we should do the Trump voice, I guess, if we can muster it again. It's truly incredible that shows like Saturday Night Live... not funny / no talent, can spend all of their time knocking the same person, me, over and over, without so much of a mention, that's the wording, of, quote, the other side. Like there has to be balance in the way Saturday Night Live approaches its jokes. I honestly, that's just, what he thinks is going on in the world, and honestly, how he meant to govern. Where does he go from here? This is what Trump tweets, and then this was long before he was, of course, banned for Twitter for inspiring a violent mob to sack the Capitol. Like an advertisement without consequences, as though that was a natural thing that followed from advertisements. Same with late night shows. Should Federal Election Commission and or FCC look into this? No, it shouldn't, you idiot, but I think you all know that. It was, on its face, a ridiculous question and threat, as SNL is obviously satire and therefore a form of protected speech in America that pissed off commanders-in-chief have no authority to directly subvert. However, then President Trump went farther than simply tweeting his displeasure with the late-night comedians in SNL writers' room. The internal discussions that followed between the former leader of the free world and some of his political and legal advisors once again underscored just how much Trump wanted to use the full weight and power of the U.S. government to punish his personal enemies. According to two people familiar with the matter, Trump had asked advisors and lawyers in early 2019 about what the Federal Communications Commission, the court system, and, most confusingly to Trump lieutenants, Trump's Department of Justice could do to probe or mitigate SNL, Jimmy Kimmel, and other late-night comedy mischief makers. To those who heard it, Trump's inquiries into what federal regulations could be used to bust the likes of Kimmel and SNL was more of a nuisance than a constitutional crisis, except they probably should have clapped him in irons, I believe. It was more annoying than alarming, to be honest with you, one of the sources recalled, which basically I interpret to mean they thought, oh, here he goes again, which means this is something that he's done before. In order for it to be more annoying than alarming, unless they are also like, well, I'm a fascist too, but this is just dumb. Perhaps that could be it. More annoying than alarming, to be honest with you, one of these sources recalled. However, the conversations further showed in the pettiest of ways how the 45th president of the United States was keen on turning the country's top law enforcers, into something more akin to his own personally retained law firm. Obvious evidence of that all over the place. Emails released by the House Oversight Committee, first reported by the New York Times, also show how Trump tried to enlist the Justice Department in his attempts to overturn Biden's election victory. We heard about that last week, of course. And then, maybe this makes our segue. In one case, Trump tried to spark the Justice Department's interest in the Italy-gate conspiracy theory, which claimed that an Italian defense contractor had somehow used a military satellite of unknown origin, still, to hack voting machines and swing the election for Biden. In another case, Trump's assistant emailed Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen a series of talking points intended to defend a bizarre and since debunked audit of Dominion voting machines in Antrim County, Michigan, by the security firm Allied Security Operations Group. That was the one with the hangar in Texas, right? The talking points released by the House Oversight Committee bore no signs of authorship, but on the same day Trump's assistant sent them to Rosen, conservative outlets ran excerpts from the same document as a release by the Trump legal team in conjunction with Allied Security Operations Group. So they put themselves in their own talking points, which I guess is to be expected. And as was the case in his crusade against liberal late-night television, most of these operations fell apart or didn't provide Trump with his desired result of devastating retribution or the complete subversion of American democratic norms. In early 2019, Trump had to be repeatedly advised that the equal time rules to which he always appeared to refer wouldn't even apply in this situation, given that late-night TV shows and NBC sketch comedy are clearly staged satire and thus not bound by the same requirement of other forms of broadcast TV and radio. The other source, who actually has a law degree, said that when they briefly discussed this with Trump more than 2 years ago, they made a point of saying that the Justice Department in particular doesn't handle these matters anyway. Trump seemed disappointed to hear that there was no actual legal recourse or anything that the FCC or DOJ could do to punish late-night anti-Trump comedy. Can something else be done about it? Trump replied, according to this source, to which they responded with some version of, I'll look into it. This person says that to this day they have not in fact looked into it. Representatives for all the TV shows and Trump did not provide any comment on this story as of Monday evening. In any case, Trump seems to have confused FCC rules he was invoking in a fury, explains Paul Matzko, a scholar on technology policy at the Cato Institute. The equal time rule refers to a specific FCC rule that wouldn't apply to SNL. Equal time meant that if a radio or TV station offered time to one political candidate, they had to offer comparable time on the same terms to an opposing candidate. It was later broadened to not only the candidates themselves and their campaigns directly, but any kind of allied group. Now, instead, Matsko says Trump is likely confusing the equal time rule with the fairness doctrine, a practice which demanded that broadcasters provide fair and balanced coverage of controversial issues of public importance. The FCC, however, stopped enforcing that doctrine in 1987 and formally revoked it in 2011. But once again, great example of Trump's brain being stuck in his glory days. He still thinks it's 1987 and that he's young and that people actually still would be interested in having sex with him for part of his money, even though they were never actually interested in him. But he still would be able to buy whatever he wanted with the money. But even those days are long gone. Anyway, in the years since 2019, Trump has not lost his interest in casually monitoring or denouncing late-night television or late-night comics who he feels have been mean to him. Trump will take the time to do this even when he's consumed with following the ongoing conspiracy theory-fueled efforts to show that he won the election that he clearly lost to Joe Biden. Still happening, I guess. So in an interview early this month, MyPillow CEO, how did he get in this, and diehard Trump ally Mike Lindell told the Daily Beast that the ex-president recently called the MAGA pillow magnate to congratulate him for appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live and for sticking it to the anti-Trump talk show host. In the past, Trump has made no secret of his distaste for SNL or Alec Baldwin's portrayal of him. Unwatchable, it stinks, and not funny during his time in office. I can't believe that he actually spent time as president of the United States doing these things, or that we spent this much time talking about it. But we'll be back with something else next.
Sup fam, it's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Man, a couple of other things that I definitely would like to get some time in for, besides his interest in suing or using the Justice Department to somehow forbid Saturday Night Live from making fun of him. There are a couple more paragraphs of this piece, although most of it won't surprise you very much. But I just wanted to reiterate, in case there was any question about what was actually going on in his head, that he really did actually, as an occupant of the White House, believe, according to this article, and I believe it, that he was really looking for ways. Trump, it says here, appeared to have convinced himself that Saturday Night Live writers were legally obligated to distribute their satirical barbs with equal time to both Democrats and Republicans. And and tweeting out, for everyone to see, that this should be tested in courts, can't be legal. And I just, I don't know what to say. I guess going back to more serious subjects, in case anybody's wondering whether he really believes, for instance, that he won the election, that there was massive voter fraud, or is really just, gaming the system, and he doesn't really believe it. He just knows that there's plenty of Americans who are dumb enough to believe it. I got to tell you, I believe he's one of those Americans who's dumb enough to believe it. And sometimes it's difficult to tell, like, what does it mean for Donald Trump to believe something? I think it's possible. Maybe we can reconcile our positions by saying Donald Trump isn't, intellectually empowered enough to have a true belief about anything. And so what would otherwise, what you could otherwise convince a jury was a true belief for someone else. They say it, they swear to it, they offer all sorts of attempts at defending it when you question it, and et cetera, versus other people who say, yeah, I know, but for our purposes, I'm willing to say I believe it. I don't think he can express that kind of nuance, and it may be that he doesn't believe it because he believes nothing at all, and so it's no different than any other thought that occurs to him or is expressed to him or is written down on a note card for him to express as his own, whatever the case may be, that he just simply doesn't believe in things. And that would be a little bit more difficult for us to distinguish in one thing from another then, because his brain clearly at that point would be, I guess you could say fairly, it just works differently at best than anybody else's. But to me, this argues in favor of his actually believing this stuff and actually believing that he has been cheated out of the election. And, like I said, I don't think it matters to him one way or the other how other people feel about these things. He's just not interested in other people and what they think and what they do with their lives. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of an interesting note. And the fact that it mentions Italy Gate and the other stupid things, some of the other stupid things that he's done with his time and done to the rest of us, gives me a chance to pivot back to that. Even though there are a couple other small hits that I really should keep small when we actually read them, but you know how we get on this show. Yesterday, I was reading to you the TPM, I think, yes, TPM's article about Italygate and where it came from. Italygate is the crown jewel of big lie conspiracies, and it just got a lot wilder. Josh Kovensky. And we got so wrapped up in how stupid the first couple layers of this Napoleon of idiocy unfolded that we didn't get to the wild part, really, that involved Virginia people. But we did get through the discovery that Hans von Spakovsky had worked his way back into into voter fraud land by way of Trump's open invitation, and had involved himself by getting on the board of this Nations in Action group run by, somehow owned, I guess, if that's the term for it, by the Virginia person that we have yet to discuss, but operated at some level day to day by the Florida person, what's her name, Ms. Zach, who ended up found herself somehow at Pervalago and in position to blurt out to Trump as he passed by during a Christmas party that she had the proof that the whole election was stolen using military satellites by contractors from Italy, and she could prove it. And he turns around and looks at her, even though, I'm not certain what that was supposed to mean. Where were we here? Yes, I think we left off by noting that von Spakovsky says he resigned from Nations in Action, and I don't know whether he put it this way or they've just concluded that this happens to be the case, but he resigned there on January 8th of this year, which means 2 days after the insurrection that sacked the Capitol, though it wasn't clear whether the two items were related. But for Zach, whatever her first name was, I've lost that along the way, they were clearly connected because she was the one, do you remember this? She showed up in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, giving an interview to an internet television show from the back of a car. Maria Strollo Zach. Maybe she's Italian. Strollo. Anyway, Maria Zach giving an interview to an internet TV show from the back of a car near the Capitol. in D.C. on January 6th, expressing her belief that the insurgency, the insurrection, then overthrowing the public order and occupying the Capitol building, would allow her to be ushered in with her Italian letter that claimed, yes, I know the hacker, or am the hacker who hacked the military satellites and changed the outcome of the election, and you all have to listen to me. But I guess she never made it inside the building, and in fact, we don't even know whether she exited the car. We left off, I guess, with that hanging out there, and now we'll read this bit here. Rome to West Virginia by way of Somalia. There was some mention of Somalia in this yesterday, and we all pondered what the F could that mean. Nations in action's involvement in this whole thing, and von Spakovsky's role with the group don't fully account for where this theory came from or how it may have ended up on the desk of Mark Meadows. You might recall, because I certainly don't, exactly what Nations in Action did with all of this, but I think it was Maria Zack, who seems to be their executive director or something like that, who brought this Italian conspiracy theory to light, along with this other woman from Virginia. And I don't know, Nations in Action, no one knows what they are or what they do or why they exist, but they ended up with this material and said, we're going to bring this to the president somehow. Anyway, both Nations in Action's activism and the letter that Mark Meadows, forwarded to Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen offer a possible clue that leads down another rabbit hole. I think this is right about where we stopped reading. To a Virginia realtor with a background that's about as fantastic as the Italy Gate theory itself. So there's a whole second part of this story. In a January 6th press release calling for Congress to reject states' electors, Nations in Action thanked another group called the Institute for Good Governance, which sounds harmless, right? For partnering on its investigation, which yielded the long-awaited proof that a flawless plot to take down America, the flaw being taking down America, I guess, the only flaw, was executed with extraordinary resources and global involvement, by which I mean Italy, I guess. TPM obtained Virginia corporate records showing that the Institute for Good Governance is registered to a woman named Michelle Roosevelt Edwards, who runs another firm called U.S. Aerospace Partners that purchased some of the assets of an Icelandic airline in 2019. Oh boy, Iceland, right? I love Iceland. I always want an Iceland angle on stories. Of course, the only Icelandic airline that would have had any of its assets for sale would have been WOW Airlines, which is now defunct. But I remember seeing their planes on the ground in Reykjavik, or Keflavik, I guess, technically. When we landed there, they were a nice, cheap, low-cost airline, and, like the Ryanair of Iceland was their model. But Ryanair, of course, not exactly crowning itself in glory lately anyway. But okay, it gets stranger. The letter that Meadows forwarded to Rosen was written by a man named Carlo Goria, who claimed to be an employee of, yes, U.S. Aerospace Partners. The letter was written on what appears to be company letterhead, and Goria, Carlo Goria, had issued press releases on the company's behalf in the past. So, why would an aerospace company be writing letters that say, I found the evidence that the election was stolen through military satellites? Don't know. But it is. TPM tried to reach both Goria and Roosevelt Edwards to gain clarity on why these companies were promoting allegations that Italy changed the results of the 2020 election. Someone at a number listed for Goria picked up the phone but hung up after a TPM reporter identified himself and refused to take further calls. There was more on Edwards Roosevelt, however. The U.S. Aerospace Chair also goes by other names, which, that's kind of a good red flag, pretty standard red flag. You have multiple aliases. I don't know. It seems weird. Let's investigate. And one of those other aliases you heard in our first reading of this piece from yesterday, Michelle Ballerin. Michelle Ballerin is this other person. Is she also a Michelle? But who goes by the name of Roosevelt Edwards, right? Michelle Roosevelt Edwards, is that right? I've forgotten already. Does she use a different first name? No. Michelle with one L, like the kooky one with the big eyes from Minnesota. What was her name again? I'm already blanking out, but you know who I'm talking about. Bachman, that's right. Okay, well anyway, she's a 1L Michelle, but she also goes by Michelle Ballerin with two L's, Ballarin, Michelle Golden, because why not? That's the same thing, right? And Amira Ballerin. Okay, that's a lot of weird, different names. She ran for Congress in 1986 in her native West Virginia under the name Michelle Golden on the Republican ticket. Maybe that was her birth name. We were trying to avoid that sexist term of maiden name, but okay. Maybe that was her first name. Foreign Policy, the magazine, reported in 2013 that during the race, and why were they reporting in 2013 on a 1986 congressional race? Not sure. But it's linked. We can find out. They reported in 2013 that during the race, she debated a cardboard cutout of her opponent with his face pasted on after he didn't attend a debate. We've seen that trick being used before. There aren't that many seats in West Virginia, so maybe we can find out which one she was running for and who didn't bother showing up to debate her, but not easily, because this the article doesn't put that up top at the front, but the article in Foreign Policy from back in 2013, this is really interesting, is entitled Mrs. Ballerin's War. So that's one of the names she uses, right? Michelle Ballerin, Mrs. Ballerin's War. What's that all about? The improbable tale of a West Virginia heiress. That answers the question of what would give you the nerve to do something dumb like this. And West Virginia heiress that the Pentagon hired to take on Somalia's jihadists. That actually could be a fascinating read one day. But first, we'll finish the TPM piece. In a brief telephone interview this week, she denied any knowledge of the document that Meadows had forwarded, telling TPM that U.S. Aerospace Partners was an American company. It is. No one denies that. When pressed on why a company employee appeared to have written the letter on official letterhead, Ballerin hung up. She did not return emails and calls to multiple addresses or messages left with her companies. Zach told TPM in a statement that, quote, "We know Michelle. We collaborate with her on different projects, but we don't disclose how we came into possession of evidence or information." That's odd. I mean, it's a nice statement to make, but if you want it to mean anything in court, then how you came into possession of evidence is key to its admission. But she doesn't discuss that because something. Ballerin made headlines in 2008, somehow, for inserting herself into negotiations with Somali pirates. This, too, has a couple of links involved, and we all may want to tumble down that rabbit hole some other time. 2008, inserting herself into negotiations with Somali pirates, who, at the time, were holding various ships and their crews hostage. Ballerin's work incensed you're never going to believe which government, the Ukrainian government at one point, according to a 2009 WikiLeaks cable. Gee whiz, there's a lot of players in this that, otherwise don't make sense together, but somehow everything falls into place here. Ukraine, WikiLeaks, I don't know, whatever else, Hans von Spakovsky, etc., etc. All right, so according to a 2009 WikiLeaks cable, after she became involved in negotiating the release of a ship full of Soviet-made tanks that was being held hostage. And why does anybody want to release a shipment of Soviet-made tanks, no matter where they're going, if they're being held hostage by Somali pirates? I mean, you can't drive a tank on the ocean. This is one thing. I mean, it's probably not a good idea to let tanks of any, manufacturer fall into the hands of Somalian pirates. They'll just sell them to somebody who will do terrible things with them. But Yeah, I'm going to have to spend some time offline, I think, looking into why is the U.S. bothering to try and get a shipment of Soviet-made tanks released from the hands of pirates at all, and why would an heiress from West Virginia have any reason to be involved in any of it? Ukraine's foreign minister accused Ballerin in a cable to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, of becoming an intermediary of the sea corsairs and of inciting the pirates to the groundless increase of the ransom sum. So it's the Ukrainians' belief that, by the way, thanks a lot for negotiating with the pirates, trying to supposedly get these Soviet-made tanks out of their hands by telling them that they should increase the amount that they're asking for ransom. How does that help? More recently, Ballerin has begun to work on potential airline acquisitions. For what reason? Based on what experience? No one knows. Wow! The Icelandic airline that U.S. Aerospace purchased has now ceased operations. And so they might have been operating and then were purchased by U.S. Aerospace and then stopped operating because don't know why, except that sounds like a good guess would be they don't know how to do anything, much less run an airline. U.S. Aerospace reportedly expressed interest in 2020, the year 2020, of purchasing Alitalia, Italy's state-owned airline, which gives us the Italian connection, except raises questions of under what circumstances does a major European nation consider selling its state-owned airline to somebody who can't run airlines? I don't know. Sounds like it might have been, well, I don't know. I met a guy from Alitalia once, so now I want to sound important, so I'm going to say I'm in negotiations to buy the airline. It remains unclear how, why, and to what extent Ballerin's companies got involved in the Italy-gate theory, or whether her business involvement in Italy is at all related to the creation of the theory. U.S. Aerospace Partners did not return a request for comment. That is actually where Josh Kovensky leaves it, which is amazing because I would never have been able to finish writing the article because there's so much unanswered stuff in here. Stuff. That was a very descriptive word. Let me turn now to the Washington Post's picking up on this story because there's even more weirdness to it. Italygate election conspiracy theory was pushed by two firms led by a woman, that is to say, two different organizations led by a woman, Ballerin, who also falsely claimed that a $30 million mansion was hers. Don't forget that the main protagonist in this part of the story claims also to be a real estate agent. And once again, the real estate agents, inexplicably inserting themselves into the middle of everything when Trump is involved. We just don't know why that happens. John Swain and Emma Brown reported this piece the other day for the Washington Post. Late last December, as President Donald Trump pressed senior officials to find proof of election fraud, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows emailed acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen a letter detailing an outlandish theory of how an Italian defense contractor had conspired with U.S. intelligence to rig the 2020 presidential contest. The letter, which was among records released by Congress this past week, was printed under the letterhead of U.S. Aerospace Partners, a little-known, because they don't do anything, Virginia aviation company. In early January, a second Virginia firm, the Institute for Good Governance, and a partner organization, that would be Nations in Action, released a statement from an Italian attorney who claimed that a hacker had admitted involvement in the supposed conspiracy. And I'm always talking to Italian hackers, so, that could happen. According to the conspiracy theory known as Italygate, people working for the Italian defense contractor, in coordination with senior CIA officials, used military satellites to switch votes from Trump to Joe Biden and swing the result of the election. Never mind whether any of it's possible. Though her name was not mentioned in either document, both Virginia organizations, U.S. Aerospace and Institute for Good Governance, are led by Michelle Roosevelt Edwards, according to state corporate filings reviewed by the Washington Post. Edwards is a former Republican congressional candidate who built a reputation, somehow, as an advocate for the Somali people and as someone who could negotiate with warlords and pirates in the war-torn region. Edwards was formerly known as Michelle Ballerin, but changed her name last year, court records show. Last year. Why? I don't know. In 2013, the Post's magazine, like Foreign Policy, explored how Edwards, once a struggling single mom, which stands in marked contrast to what the Foreign Policy magazine writer said about her, an heiress. I mean, you can be a single mom heiress, but and I guess depending on what you're heir to, you could be struggling or not struggling, but it's not usually, expressed quite that way about the same person. The Post magazine explored how Edwards, once a struggling single mom, had reinvented herself. That's how Foreign Policy found out about this. Reinvented herself as a business executive and then as a well-connected horse country socialite who cultivated ties with senior Somali officials. And maybe as Michelle Golden, she was in fact a struggling single mom, then married somebody with some money, and maybe the guy's name was Ballerin and she took that name. And I mean, there's no answers, but this is my best guess about how she ends up, one, changing her name like the normal way, and two, transforming herself from a struggling single mom to an heiress. Although if you're an heiress, I don't know. I guess maybe she's heir to her husband's fortune. Whatever. The Institute for Good Governance's registered headquarters since late last year has been the historical North Wales Farm, a 22-bedroom mansion in Warrenton, Virginia, state records show. The property is listed for sale at just under $30 million. On the day after the 2020 election, Edwards sat for an interview at North Wales with a television crew from Iceland, where she has business interests. Now you and I both know what those business interests are. And it is running a business into the ground, apparently. Edwards told the crew that the estate was her property. According to their footage, "This is my bedroom," she said, showing the crew around. "This is a very private space." And she's really trying to sell it here, which ordinarily, say, okay, sure, of course it's a private space. It's a bedroom. But it sounds like the crew is onto it already, because the discussion then goes to, the article says she was then pressed on the lack of personal items in the house. It's a very private space with no private things in it. They noticed this. And they ask, "So this is where you live?" "Yes." "This is your property?" "Yes." When the interviewer noted, because I guess they already knew, that the website listings showed the property as being for sale, Edwards said, "Well, it was a recent acquisition for us." She said it was not for sale. But North Wales was then and is now owned by a company formed by David B. Ford, a retired financier who died in September. Ford's widow said in an interview that she did not know Edwards. The Post then showed her the footage of Edwards inside the property. "She's in my house," the widow said. "How is she in my house?" And I guess the answer is she's a realtor. And she probably said, "I want to show the house," but she really wanted to have an interview with Icelandic television in the house, so it looked like she had the money to run this airline, which she didn't. That was my guess, right? The North Wales mansion was for sale at the time, and Edwards was a licensed realtor in the area, according to the firm's website. I don't know what firm. A real estate firm for which she claims to work, I guess. Hers was not the firm that Ford's widow had hired to sell the property, though. Edwards declined to comment. "I'm not giving media interviews at this time," she said in her text message. Okay. And by the way, there's an embedded video of the interview with Iceland, the Iceland TV crew, and Michelle Roosevelt Edwards. Very interesting look she's got going on here with a bow tie on, but whatever, fashion statement, right? The discovery of the role Edwards' two firms had in spreading the Italygate conspiracy theory, as well as the roles others played, sheds new light on its origins and on how the claims made their way from feverish online speculation to some of the most powerful figures in government. As Trump refused to concede defeat, his diehard supporters pushed the conspiracy theory on social media and other channels as part of an effort to discredit Biden's presidency that continues today. Prosecutors in Rome told the Post that they are now investigating whether false claims were made against the Italian defense contractor. The prosecutor's office said it was examining various subjects, both Italian and non-Italian. A conservative Italian news site owned by a politician who has written about Italygate reported this month that the politician and Edwards are among those under investigation. Italygate appears to be partly rooted in a news article published on December 1st by the Italian newspaper La Verità. In the article, Daniele Capezzone, a reporter and TV commentator described as the Sean Hannity of the Italian press by some Italygate proponents, wrote that Trump's team was investigating whether an official in the U.S. Embassy in Rome conspired with an unnamed Italian defense contractor to manipulate the U.S. elections. That's pretty vague. I wouldn't bother investigating that without more. Bradley Johnson, a Virginia-based commentator on intelligence matters who says he is a retired senior CIA officer, that's what he says, then advanced a version of the theory in a video interview recorded on December 5th and later posted online. Johnson identified the defense contractor as Leonardo, an Italian firm that was coincidentally in the news that day because two men had been arrested in an unrelated hacking case involving the company. So it may very well have been that Bradley Johnson saw the news that an Italian firm called Leonardo had two people arrested for hacking, and he just said, that's it, those are the hackers. What they were hacking was the U.S. election, even though the article said nothing about it. Leonardo, the firm, did not respond to questions from the Post. Johnson cited Capezzone as his source, but Capezzone told the Post in an email that he did not identify Leonardo as the contractor in his reporting and said that Johnson had not contacted him. Johnson did not respond to phone calls, messages sent via LinkedIn and the website of his nonprofit, Americans for Intelligence Reform, or a letter left at the nonprofit's office in Manassas, Virginia. Lots of sort of outer ring bedroom communities involved here. In the wake of Johnson's video, Italygate began to gather momentum. Maria Strollo Zak, the Republican operative from Georgia who has embraced the conspiracy theory, told the Post that she has been in contact with Johnson about it. Zak was the one who was at Mar-a-Lago and gave the interview from the back of the car on January 6th, etc., etc. More about these nuts after this. Okay, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on into this weird rabbit hole here. You remember Maria Zak. Zak, 57, has said in interviews with right-wing media outlets that she told Trump about the conspiracy theory on Christmas Eve at Mar-a-Lago, the actual name being Mar-a-Lago, the president's private club in Palm Beach, Florida. Zak, who formed a super PAC, that's a rhyme but unintentional, that backed Senator Ted Cruz in the 2016 presidential campaign. Don't let that shock you. There were plenty of people who switched from Cruz to Trump pretty quickly, including the Mercers, who, did the same thing. Anyway, Zak said on a conference call with supporters that Trump's second wife, Marla Maples, and their daughter, Tiffany, somehow involved in this, they helped Zak and her husband obtain invitations to the club. So it was Marla Maples that somehow, allegedly, according to Zak, was the one who positioned Zak inside Mar-a-Lago for the Christmas party to give Donald Trump the information about the election. Now, you might wonder, what power does Marla Maples have to give people invitations to Mar-a-Lago? She's not married to Trump. And he is currently married, allegedly anyway, to the other one. I can't even keep them all straight now. And does she have anything to say about that? Or maybe it's Tiffany, who still has access to the club. I got no idea. She may have met Marla Maples and said, can I get into Mar-a-Lago? And she said, I can't get you there, but maybe Tiffany can. Perhaps that's it. It's not made clear here, but that's about all we got. Representatives from Maples and Tiffany Trump did not respond to questions. Zak told the Post that she had a, quote, personal friendship with them. Maybe, maybe not. But apparently Tiffany, yes, along with Marla, helped Zach and her husband obtain the invitations. A woman who identified herself as Maples was on the call. So there's a conference call during which time Zach says, "This is how I got to Mar-a-Lago," and then a voice chimes in and says, "This is Marla Maples. It's all true." I mean, I don't know what happens in this. Maybe she did know them. In Zach's telling, Trump wished her a Merry Christmas, which thank God he can do again, right? Only through the powers of Donald Trump was he able to say those words. And she used that opening, which it isn't, to pass him a written note about Italy and the promise of a whistleblower who knew the scheme to flip votes, knew of the scheme. So that's the open. Merry Christmas. The election was stolen. I guess in Trump world, that's an opening. Hi, how are you? Merry Christmas. I am going to reverse democracy in the Western world. Okay. So I guess that explains the initial description we read of him turning around and looking at her, and then that's it. But okay, Merry Christmas. Here's a note, and we can reverse the election. "We know the guy who did it and how he did it," she said she told Trump, according to an interview on a talk show broadcast by the Reno, Nevada-based outlet America Matters Media. I have to read that carefully. It's not Media Matters for America, the ones we know who do good work. It's America Matters Media, which is probably not at all formulated its name so that it's confused with Media Matters on Facebook when it posts disinformation or whatever it does with its day. I don't know. On Christmas Eve, Zach's husband posted a photograph of Trump to Facebook that he indicated was taken at Mar-a-Lago, but the post was unable to confirm Zach's version of events there. So we don't know. It's a picture of Trump. Wow, where'd you get that picture? Well, first of all, it's proof that I gave him all the information from Italygate at Mar-a-Lago. Second of all, yes, it looks like a picture taken from a telephoto lens of him on a golf course. But I'm telling you, I was right there and my phone was malfunctioning and we were indoors. But okay, sure, well, bye. I don't know what the photo looked like. But they're clearly unsure about whether or not it actually shows what he claims it shows. Zach claimed in a second media interview that Rudy Giuliani, then Trump's personal attorney, because he's not anymore, right, called her the following morning to set up a meeting to discuss her claims. So that's what her story is. I went to Mar-a-Lago, Christmas Eve. He said, "Merry Christmas." I said, "Oh my God, I can overturn democracy in the Western world." And he said, "All right, I'll have Rudy call you." Rudy does call. She explains herself. Now, in checking that out, a spokeswoman for Trump did not respond to a request for comment. Messages left for Giuliani's attorneys seeking comment were not returned. Now up to December 29th, where Meadows sent Rosen the letter from Edwards' company, U.S. Aerospace Partners. Right? The letter was written in Italian and signed by Carlo Goria, we learned about him in the last article, who was identified in past news releases as a company contact, just of some kind. U.S. Aerospace said last year that it was interested in buying the troubled Italian airline Alitalia and suggested it would, ready, make Alitalia great again. Yeah? Huh? Well, I don't know that it's really for sale. Could be troubled, but state airlines probably always are because they can afford to be troubled because they're supported by the state. Goria did not respond to messages. In a story published Saturday, Talking Points Memo, we read that, reported that in a brief interview, Edwards denied any knowledge of the letter. Several current and former Trump advisors said they were shocked that Meadows would pass along such a fantastical conspiracy theory, but one former senior administration official said Meadows bought into some of the more bizarre claims and would push them to the president as well. The official spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations. It was not clear from the emails released by Congress how Meadows obtained the U.S. Aerospace letter. A spokesman for Meadows declined to comment. On New Year's Day, Meadows sent Rosen a link to a video of Johnson, who has said he served as a CIA station chief, discussing Italygate. On January 4th, Zach held the conference call with supporters, the audio of which was posted online. Is that where Marla Maples supposedly comes into it? Zach told the Post that the call was with volunteers for her Florida-based nonprofit, Nations in Action. On the call, Zach claimed that she had also supplied documents to senior White House advisor Peter Navarro. In an email to the Post, Navarro said this was, quote, not accurate. Okay. On January 6th, it's a big day, Zach's nonprofit released a statement claiming that it had conducted an election fraud investigation with the Institute for Good Governance, Edwards' Virginia-based group, and that their efforts had yielded the long-awaited proof that a flawless plot to take down America, remember this, was executed with extraordinary resources and global involvement. Edwards, 65, has charted a colorful path in and around Washington. She has founded several businesses in fields including security, investment management, and aviation. All three places where you can do a lot of money laundering and a lot of stealing. And by the way, she now, after all of these other awesome and totally successful businesses in security, investment management, and aviation, is a realtor, which is the other place where most people launder their money. How odd. After she married Edward Golden. Okay, so Golden is not her original name, but married name. I don't know what her original, maybe Ballerin was her. No, that's another person she married. All right, well, no word on what maybe her first name was Edwards, and she's changed it last year to go back to it because she's divorced from everybody else that she was once married to. Okay, well, here's the story. After she married Edward Golden, a real estate executive, hooray for real estate, and had a son, Edwards ran for Congress as a Republican in West Virginia in 1986, but lost in the general election. After that marriage ended, she married Eugenio Ballarin, Ballarin, a New York restaurant maitre d', with whom she owns a farmhouse in Markham, Virginia. Edwards is registered to vote as a Republican in Warrenton at the North Wales Farm in Virginia? Warrenton, Virginia? Is it Markham, Virginia, where she owns a farmhouse with Eugenio Ballarin, the restaurant maitre d' from New York? No. Is it in New York at Eugenio Ballarin's place where he spends his time when he's not working at the restaurant? No. Edwards is registered to vote as a Republican. Is it West Virginia where she ran as a Republican for Congress in 1986? No, still not that either. Registered as a Republican at a condominium in Palm Beach, Florida. State records show. Totally normal. Absolutely. You can live with connections to 15 states, registered in this one, run for Congress in that one, pretend you own a mansion in the other one. What the hell? No difference. And by the way, I also know how to negotiate with Somalian pirates. You tell me if you would accept, you found a letter written in Italian that says that the election was stolen with military satellites? That's the least weird thing I've heard about you all day. Give me that letter. You sound like a genius. Because of her efforts to bring stability to Somalia. What? Beginning nearly 2 decades ago, Somalis, this explains one of the names, came to refer to her as Amira, which means princess in Arabic. Sure. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they checked that fact. The Post's magazine story reported. That was way back in 2013, their Post story, magazine story. So that explains the Amira part. In 2009, the Somali president named her Presidential Advisor for Reconstruction and Humanitarian Assistance. How? Why? Don't know. She claimed to have played pivotal roles in securing the release of hostages. Yet a diplomatic cable released as a part of a trove posted online by WikiLeaks revealed that in 2009, Ukraine's foreign minister had complained to U.S. officials that Edwards was hindering efforts to negotiate with Somali pirates who had captured a ship and its crew. No mention of the tanks here. One retired naval intelligence officer who partnered with Edwards during 2008 to 2010 was quoted in the Post story as saying, The problem with Michelle is separating fact from fiction. What is real and what is made up? Sounds perfect for entering into Trump world, doesn't it? In September of 2019, Edwards announced that her U.S. aerospace group had bought the assets of Iceland's bankrupt airline, WOW Air. So here alleging that WOW went bankrupt first, then they bought them out of bankruptcy. That would make more sense. And the claim, though, that it would soon resume flights. It has not. Asked by the Post how she came to work with Edwards, Zach said in an email, "I'm stuck in a car." Said, "This is an ongoing investigation, and we do not disclose information on our methods and sources." This is her partner in the investigation. We're not asking you to reveal sources and methods about your investigation, but you are conducting an investigation. You admit that much? Yes? Yes. You have a partner in this investigation, and it is somehow the Institute for Good Governance / maybe also U.S. Aerospace. How did you come to connect with Edwards and U.S. Aerospace and Institute for Good Governance? I will not tell you, because there's an ongoing investigation. Yes, but the investigation isn't about that. It's about something completely different. I don't know. I once heard on television an important person say that I won't speak about an ongoing investigation, and the press accepted that, and why aren't you accepting this now, is probably what her reaction was. Okay, so their joint news release linked to a copy, that is Edwards and Zach, through one or another of their organizations, I guess. We could take a look at the joint news release and see how they put it. Let's see if it'll even open up. Press release: votes switched throughout U.S. presidential race. Institute for Good Governance. So, yeah, I don't know. And it's from. That's interesting. So it's on the Nations in Action website. Press release: votes switched, blah, 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 according to this Institute for Good Governance. So it's a joint news release from the two organizations, I guess, and yet they won't discuss how they came to meet one another. Their joint news release linked to a copy of a sworn statement signed by a Sicily-based lawyer, Alfio D'Urso. In that document, D'Urso said he knew from a high-level Army Security Services official, that's in quotes, that one of the alleged hackers in the unrelated case had told a judge that he had undertaken an operation to flip votes from Trump to Biden, and that he had done so at the direction of Americans at the U.S. Embassy in Rome. I guess is that the people who got arrested in the Leonardo case? I guess so. Nicola Naponiello, an attorney for the alleged hacker, told the Post that this was false and that neither he nor his client had ever heard of D'Urso. He's not accused of anything connected to that, Naponiello said of his client. Naponiello, who previously spoke to Reuters, said the whole story was a, quote, classic fake into which his client had inexplicably been dragged. My guess, again, is that, what's his name? Johnson, from Virginia, who made the video, who claimed to be a CIA station chief. Maybe he heard about the fantasy of the idea of Italian hackers being involved, and then he saw a news story about some Italians who had been arrested for hacking, and he just said, those are the guys, based on nothing. D'Urso did not respond to emails and messages left with his office. The news release from the Zach and Edwards groups also linked to a PDF copy of a story about Italygate from an Italian news site. Edwards' name appears in the PDF metadata as the creator. Chatter about the conspiracy theory exploded among Trump's base. Among other influential figures, the former Trump advisors Michael Flynn, can you believe it, and George Papadopoulos, who every time he thinks he's out, they keep pulling him back in, apparently. Both of whom Trump pardoned, by the way, for lying to the FBI during the inquiry into Russia's 2016 election interference, posted about the conspiracy theory on Twitter. Italy did it, Flynn wrote. I knew about Flynn's pardon, but I don't think I registered George Papadopoulos' pardon as well. I think I forgot that if I did register it. In appearances on right-wing online media, Zach has said she tried to raise the alarm by reaching out to members of Congress and others in Washington, including Christopher Miller, then acting defense secretary. Miller was, quote, very involved. Let's round him up. Miller was very involved, Zach claimed in an interview with America Matters Media in April. There were a lot of people working hard to help us, she said. Miller was aware of the claims but did not believe them and considered them fabricated, according to a former Defense Department official familiar with the situation. The official spoke on condition of anonymity. Zach said she is still pushing for law enforcement to investigate the allegations. It is the duty of the Department of Justice to ensure the U.S. elections were free of foreign influence and election fraud, she said in an email. Others, however, are unconvinced. Pure insanity, that's a quote. Justice Department official Richard Donahue wrote to his boss, Rosen, after Meadows sent his emails containing the claims, the records released by Congress show. Even Capizzoni, the Italian journalist whose December 1st article set off speculation about the conspiracy theory, has since said he's concluded that it was false. Or rather, said that he has since concluded it was false. In an email to the Post, Capizzoni said Italy-gate was fake news, a conspiracy theory, a poisoned chalice. And that's the end of that crazy-ass article. So we made it all the way through. In terms of finding out just how weird and wacko pretty much everybody involved in this case is, which I gather, if I had told you nothing about them and I had asked you, all right, here's the gist of the Italy-gate conspiracy. What do you think about the people involved? You would probably say, I don't know anything about them, but I bet that they are total wackos and have invented their lives from start to finish. I guess you would have guessed that, and you would have been right. Now I'm actually quite intrigued about finding out more about the Ballerin background, but I don't know. That doesn't seem like the best use of our time on the air today. I'll just simply remind you again, yesterday I mentioned Tariq and another Michelle, Salahi, who, perhaps maybe I'll give you their Wikipedia entries and an article or two about them. But do you remember these two? As I refreshed your memory about it yesterday, these are another two people with sort of an invented identities and a past. And in some cases, there's some distant connection to people of influence and money, but generally speaking, they spent the bulk of their adult lives pretending to be the wealthy people. Maybe they used to be wealthy and never really gave up on it. It's one of the things people could do. When you're wealthy, when you start with a bunch of money, you can continue pretending you're wealthy for a very long time and live the lifestyle of the wealthy even when you don't have any money. If you start out poor, you cannot do that. But, wealth brings certain advantages and connections with it, and that's what they do. But, the Salahis, as I recall, well, you'll remember them from crashing the state dinner in the early 2009 in the early Obama White House. But once people investigated who they were, they sort of unraveled everything. I think Michelle Salahi is a former Washington Breadsticks cheerleader, now the Washington football team. She was a cheerleader and essentially, brought nothing else to the table. But Tariq Salahi brought the impression of having a bunch of money. I think he at some point had ownership of a vineyard in Virginia, which was one of the early Virginia wineries that was established. At some point, Virginia decided to subsidize / encourage the development of a wine industry. He jumped in, started these Oasis vineyards or whatever. His dad owned the land and he jumped in. Anyway, he bankrupted the place and that's gone now. But he also was famous for, all this, a collection of Ferraris and Lamborghinis parked outside of his mansion. And again, another one of these mansions with no furniture in it. And I believe he actually did play polo actively, but, started a second polo association that wasn't the official polo associated, a little bit like Rand Paul and his fake ophthalmology licensing group, and he just started collecting money and raising money and doing charity events. But he actually did play polo, and at one point he gets himself photographed with Prince Charles, who pretty famously plays polo. There's sort of a U.S. UK polo match of some kind. Anyway, the whole thing was super shady, and it reminds me a lot about them. But they crashed a Democratic White House state dinner, and I think they did so thinking that they were Obama fans. So perhaps there's no political bias in, across the board, that all fakers and fraudsters of that sort are all Republicans. Although they are chiefly Republicans. This is the only bunch of Democrats that do that I found. And who knows, maybe they were Republicans crashing the thing in the hopes of embarrassing a Democratic White House. I don't know. You'd have to look into it. But I think actually Tariq Salahi at some point, after all this scandal, at some point pretends, that he's going to run for, I think he was mad at Ken Cuccinelli, which, great. But I think it was because Cuccinelli, when he was Attorney General, investigated Salahi and thought he would bring him down for all this fraud, which was maybe not such a bad idea. And then Salahi said he was going to run against Cuccinelli, I think when Cuccinelli was running for governor. But then, we didn't need him because we had a serious Democratic candidate instead, and that was that. So, okay, I think he really, in other words, he may really be a Democrat, but I don't know, maybe that was done to embarrass Democrats too. Man, there's a lot of goofiness going on in the world. All right, we're saving the last segment, of course, for Joan, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about filibuster and S1 and its fate, and maybe Kirsten Sinema's op-ed in the paper the other day, which I see everyone critiquing. I actually literally have not read that one because what the hell am I going to read Kirsten Sinema's views on the filibuster for? I know what they are. I know they're not likely to make any sense, and they have not. And that has borne itself out. But perhaps we can talk about the nuance of it or make particular fun of her when that chance comes around when we speak to Joan after the break. One more thing I'll squeeze in just because it seems like along the right lines today for light news about weirdos and Donald Trump, who doesn't matter anymore. We hope never matters again. But just in case, I don't know, I guess we'll spend some time tarring his reputation even further, besides yesterday's new book publication and review illustrating just how callous he was in his approach to fighting the coronavirus. We have this item from the New York Times. Jonah Bromwich noting for the record that Trump is now suing somebody else. He's suing New York City. Why? For ending his golf course contract after the Capitol riot. The Trump Organization, which had a 20-year contract to operate a public golf course in the Bronx, claims it was unfairly targeted. The Trump Organization sued New York City on Monday, saying the city had wrongly terminated a lucrative golf course contract for political reasons after the January 6th riot at the Capitol in Washington. This is, of course, similar to the case of the suit against New York City for renaming the Benedict Arnold Pavilion. I had a 20-year contract with you to sell ice cream out of the Benedict Arnold Pavilion. Yes, but you're a traitor to the country and we're afraid people won't buy ice cream from us anymore. I don't care. We had a contract. That's what's going on here. The suit, filed in New York State Supreme Court, which you'll recall is actually the trial level court for some reason in New York State, filed in Manhattan on the eve of the mayoral election, which it won't affect, I'm sure, argued that the January decision by Mayor Bill de Blasio to end the company's 20-year contract to run the public golf course in the Bronx had no legitimate legal basis and was meant only to punish former President Donald J. Trump. Mayor de Blasio has a pre-existing politically biased predisposition to terminate Trump-related contracts, and the city used the events of January 6th, nothing but insurgency, an armed insurrection, as a pretext to do so, the suit said. In a statement, the company said that the course was widely recognized as one of the most magnificent public golf experiences anywhere in the country. the puffery for which Trump once became famous. A spokesman for the mayor, Bill Neidhart, responded saying, Donald Trump directly incited a deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. You do that, and you lose the privilege of doing business with the city of New York. Okay, that's a position I can actually respect and enjoy. Trump was impeached, of course, this year for inciting that riot, his second impeachment, but was acquitted by the Senate after leaving office. Well, we know all about that. So, I don't know. What do you make of that situation? That's probably all we need to really know about it. It's interesting that he thinks he has a case, but then again, remember that he thought he had a case against Saturday Night Live for making fun of him and not making fun of other people with equal, fervor and for equal amounts of time. So, not likely that he has a real strong position all the time whenever he enters into court battles, and we were able to document that all throughout his presidency with a long Twitter thread about that. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning. I have good news to report. Many more listeners like you are making critical contributions that keep our show on the air. Makes good sense, of course, and patreon.com, patreon.com, makes it simple. Now you can make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for helping keep you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is here joining us. Are you still in the midst of posting it? She's finishing up her Kirsten
Yes,
Cinema story. Okay.
I have to come up with 3 alternative headlines.
Oh, okay. So we can help you with that. Dopey Kirsten Cinema, shut up forever. No, that's not right. That's too harsh.
It's really just insult to injury that she decided to have this op-ed run on the eve of the Democrats bringing up the For the People Act.
Yeah, I wonder whose idea it was. I'm sure she didn't turn it down. Could have been the Post saying, "Ooh, that's when it'll be hot and juicy. We'll really love to push you into the middle of the controversy." She may have demanded it. It may have just been an accident. I don't know, but it's not good. And I had mentioned the op-ed just because everyone is sort of talking about it, but I haven't read it, and I felt that it was probably a waste of time to do so, but I'm glad somebody else has done it. And,
it's not a waste of time if you want to see just how bankrupt Kirsten Cinema's ideas really are.
Yeah.
Manchin's wasn't as vacuous in some ways. I mean, it's really incoherent. We can't get rid of the filibuster because if we pass stuff with a simple majority, then maybe the voters aren't going to like it and they're going to elect Republicans and Republicans will undo it.
Yeah, but
that's all she's got.
Huh.
Ignoring the fact that, you can do that with budget reconciliation too, as Republicans showed us in trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Which, by the way, John McCain stopped. Right. The John McCain that she wants to assume the mantle of. She wants to be the next McCain. She wants to be the Maverick. Yeah, she can't. Because McCain got to be all of that by standing up to Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, so you can't
Whereas
really...
she's ceding all of her power to him.
Yeah, that's the opposite. So, yeah, in terms of living his legacy, it's really easy to do. If it's about standing up to McConnell, then you should stand up to McConnell. Oh, I thought maybe by doing the opposite, we would. Maybe that's it. I'm going to elevate his legacy by doing the opposite, and everyone will miss John McCain. No.
I don't think that's what she was trying going.
Yeah, I don't know what she was going for there. Yeah, well, I did. That's everyone's major complaint about her article is that I guess her whole thing rests on we don't want a situation where every couple of years we're switching majorities and just doing, undoing, and then redoing the same legislation over and over again. We want continuity and stability, which we do want. We want that, but of course,
it's pretending like 11 years of Obamacare repeal hasn't been happening.
Yeah,
she's arguing that if something like the For the People Act passes with the simple Democratic majority vote, then Republicans will come back and do exactly what Republicans are doing in every state right now to prevent Democrats from voting, from being elected.
Right. I mean...
And they're doing it on a completely partisan basis.
Yeah.
They're shutting Democrats out entirely. That's the thing that she's saying we can't do. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right, though. It doesn't make any particular sense. And, I mean, it's happening... She's making this argument in a context that everyone can see daily in every newspaper, evidence that it doesn't make any sense. In her own state, I mean, she can't even hide from it in her own state. They're fake auditing an election right now under her nose.
Yeah.
And I mean, what? Well, I guess I don't know. Like, is whipsawing back and forth between different majorities? Is it any worse than saying, yes, you should probably reverse the vote of Arizona based on whatever I come up with in my cabin in Montana this weekend? And, I don't get the idea that she's not interested in intervening in that. And I don't get the idea that everything has to be bipartisan except for the premise of democracy. That can be set by partisan majorities in the states, but on the federal level it must be bipartisan. And then, of course, the other name for electing a new majority to undo unpopular laws is accountability and representation. That's the way most people think of it. If the current Congress is terrible and does things that I feel are bad for America, I will vote for a different Congress with the intention that they undo the damage of the previous one and, hopefully have a proactive agenda of good things as well. But that's kind of what everybody thinks they're doing when they go to vote. And I guess that's her news for everyone. No. You're always voting, no matter who you're voting for, because of the way I think the Senate should run, you're always voting for more of the same. Vote Republican,
right.
Vote Democratic, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same thing, and things will stay the same forever. Go vote. Go motivate yourself to get out. Go knock on doors and tell people, I'm here to tell you nothing's going to change, and you need to go out of your house and stand in line to make sure that nothing ever changes, positive or negative. Please come. All right.
Pretty much.
Well, I guess all that she really needs to see change in the world is her wigs and outfits. That's all she's really interested in. I just want to give the thumbs down in a different scale.
The other thing that she's doing in this is pretty much disenfranchising every Democratic voter in the country.
Oh, that's
She's
bad.
saying your majority vote, your huge majority vote for the U.S. Senate doesn't count.
Oh, well. Well, that's a motivator.
You voted for a Democratic senator? Too bad. Mitch McConnell, by proxy, gets your vote.
Well, will she at least let me stay home and do it by mail? No. Okay.
No.
Right, I still have to get up and go out and do this thing. Okay. Well, I was worried at the outset that I would feel like it was a waste of time. I mean, it's always wise to keep track of this stuff because, of course, people in Arizona might be interested in knowing what they've ended up with here. They still don't know. But, yeah, I had a feeling that she wasn't going to do anything that wasn't going to write anything that required, like, she may have a point here. However, I think we should, let's examine the nuance and see if it stands up to examination. It just never reached that level. So that's sad and disturbing, and of course it will all come to a head today during, I guess, a cloture vote on a motion to proceed to S1. Is that where we stand with the procedure today?
Yeah.
Okay. And people pointing out, by the way, that because it is a motion to proceed, the opportunity exists, and someone should prevail. I mean, it won't make a difference substantively in the end, possibly, but it is possible for Manchin or Sinema or both to say, well, yeah, I'll vote for cloture on a motion to proceed. I won't vote for cloture on ending debate on the bill unless it comes around to what I want. But in terms of debating it, I'm a yes. So we'll see, what kind of position they stake out for themselves, because they can vote yes on cloture, and there's still a major hurdle, major roadblock to actually even getting to a vote on passage of the bill. That's still there if they strongly object on whatever they think might be their ideology that day. The opportunity is there. But it'll tell us something whether they allow debate on the floor to begin on this bill or not. Exactly who's influencing them and where their vote, whose pocket is it really in? So I guess we'll find out. Sinema writes that it sounds like Mitch McConnell is the answer for that.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting thing. I don't know. I wonder how much do they get along, the two of them? I know they're in the same place, but I don't know how they are personally.
Judging by her, I don't know. I don't know what he thinks of her. I mean, we've seen her kissing up to him.
Yeah, but we've also seen her wearing
pat on the back to him as she's voting against raising the minimum wage.
Oh yes, right.
I mean, before she gave her little curtsy and her thumbs down, she walked up and gave Mitch McConnell a big pat on the back.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm curious. Mitch McConnell's a conservative guy, and so is Joe Manchin, and I just wonder, like Joe Manchin, does he ever say, I can't believe I'm stuck in the middle of all this with her, or what a solid ally, I'm so glad to be here with her. Oh, look at that, terrific, a purple wig and a F-off ring. Just what West Virginia voters wanted. Okay. I find it hard to believe. However, that may be very popular among the populace of West Virginia. There's lots of free thinkers out there in West Virginia. But it's not what you think of when you think of the political establishment there. But, okay, I was just curious. So that's got to be frustrating that you had to even wade through that. But it's almost over. Maybe he's gonna get the post done. And
on infrastructure work, Kirsten Sinema.
Okay, that comes up too. Yeah, so
it's really frustrating. And it's not like Republicans aren't being very clear what they're trying to do here. This morning, Jerry Moran, who was one of the group of 21 bipartisan senators, says, we're just doing this to, quote, reduce the likelihood of the use of the opportunities Democrats have for passing things with 51 votes. We're doing this to prevent reconciliation use for further infrastructure issues.
Mm-hmm.
So their whole point in doing this is peeling away enough moderate Democrats in this bipartisan effort to prevent them from voting for reconciliation for the rest of the package.
Okay.
And they're telling us what they're doing. They're telling us why they're doing it.
Well, that's nice of them. I appreciate it.
And, they're probably not even promising that in the end they're going to vote for this thing, that they're going to give us 60 votes.
Right.
They're just poisoning the well to make sure Biden doesn't get his infrastructure package.
Okay. Well, it's important to know that, and good point, right? They say, well, we're trying to craft this thing in such a way that we can help peel off votes, There'll be less need for certain more conservative Democrats to go the reconciliation route for the rest of these things. But they might just say at the end, all right, so all the moderate Democrats will vote yes, but we'll still vote no, and pull the rug out from underneath them. But I don't know. Yeah, I wonder how that works as a strategy. Does that then make the Senate Democrats who thought they were, working with them, but were really just being peeled off from reconciliation, then say, well, now I definitely have to work to pass reconciliation because I didn't even get the little part of it that I was supposed to get? I'm not certain, but well, you never know with these people. It's difficult. Wasn't my fault. I voted for it, so I'm still gonna. I don't know. That's very odd.
It's very frustrating. It's what it is, and we pretty much knew this was happening. And it's just it all boils down again to Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and the filibuster.
Well, that stands in the way of everything.
Judging by this performance from Sinema, she's not going to be movable, and I don't know what you do about that. I mean, I think Biden probably, as the old Senate guy, really did want to see if the Senate could figure this out. If he gave them the benefit of the doubt and said, "This is what they do. They work this stuff out with the president. We're going to go through that process and see what happens." I think that was part of it, but I also think part of it was saying, "All right, we've got to show Manchin and Sinema the limits of bipartisanship. We've got to show them that we give the olive branch every time and Republicans spit on it."
Yeah.
So here, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, here's proof.
Yes.
Not working.
No, and it's not clear from the op-ed whether anything could work or whether anything would make sense to her, even if it did. I mean, right, I've logicked my way out of, or I'm having a logical argument with a brick wall. Like, I don't know why I oppose this thing.
Well,
I just do.
She talks about things like, she completely ignores the fact that budget reconciliation does exist, that Republicans could undo all of the things that she says she's protecting by keeping the filibuster, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, that all of these things that she says she's protecting, they could undo with budget reconciliation.
Yes, almost sure.
With just 50 votes and a vice president.
Well, I think a little more difficult with Social Security because I think there's bird rules against it, but
a little more difficult with Social Security, but there's still a lot that they can do to mess around with it.
Yes, and undermining all the other programs in some places has the ways of knocking the pillars out from under Social Security, even if you don't address it directly. So there's enough overlap, and certainly even if there wasn't, I suppose if you dismantle Medicare, Medicaid, and several other safety net programs, but say Social Security is still there. Social Security has always been inadequate on its own anyway, and so fine, leave it there and then attack it directly when everyone realizes that it's been underfunded and inadequate. Okay, so that's a strategy too. But yeah, none of the things that she says are being protected are protected ultimately.
No.
So you'd think, all right, now that being the case, do you have a second approach to what it is, whatever the hell it is you think you're trying to do here?
She does not.
I have to go. Yeah, that is all the time.
She does not. She argues that on a bipartisan basis we've been able to do things like take care of veterans' mental health, and we've she's talking about the small, non-controversial, really not unimportant things, but not crucial things that the Senate can do on a bipartisan basis, ignoring the fact that they can only work around the margins on a bipartisan basis, that they can't do anything that actually saves our democracy.
Yeah, right.
On a bipartisan basis, because Republicans aren't interested in doing that. And really, it's a gift to Mitch McConnell in so many ways, but he's going to be able to stand on the floor this afternoon in debate and point Kyrsten Sinema saying this is a bad idea.
Even the liberal.
And that could be the most unforgivable part of all of this.
Well, yeah, we'll see what kind of use he makes of this. But yeah, that's quite a disappointment just in terms of hearing her. I guess that it would even work with anybody. Maybe it just doesn't work with anybody. It occupies space, though, to say, well, we have been able to, address veterans' mental health, which, while important, and lots of people probably care about it if you press them on it. I've never seen it, at the top of a priorities list, say, in polling people. Yes, number one issue, veterans' mental health. Very good to address it, but it's like saying, if you notice, not a single post office without a name. How about that for a record? How many post offices are there in this country? Every single one of them has been named on a bipartisan basis. Yeah. Good. That way we know which post office we're talking about. If I say go to the post office and you don't know which one I'm talking about or in what city, we can straighten it out. But it's just not the same as saving democracy, say, or making sure people have the right to vote and can actually access the voting machines or get into the polling place or not have their names purged on a, probably racial basis. But hey, something's got taken care of. That's nice. I don't know who she thought she was convincing with that one. But maybe it just didn't matter. It just wanted to have her name on an important sounding article that everyone reads, even if they're reading it because they need to know what to roll their eyes at today. Because say they're doing a radio show or something like that. Didn't work with me. Huh? I didn't read it. So there. Gotcha. I've got one over on Kyrsten Sinema with that.
It's really, she's academically clearly very bright. She's achieved a lot.
Well, that's good. That's
she's
surprising
not
given
stupid.
how bad this is.
I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
she's certainly
I'm glad
not
to hear
coming
that,
across as serious and thoughtful.
Yeah,
and
I might not
principled
have
in any of this.
I might not have guessed that she was academically accomplished from the sound of the reviews of this thing and other things I've seen her take positions on. But then again, it's often, this is a position I take for public consumption. I'm not going to go into the nuance of it. You can't stop me on the street and debate me about it. So I'm just not going to do it. And for most people, a simple answer and a couple of lines that sound like they were well written, even if they don't make any sense, is enough. And maybe that's all she's doing and saying, I understand this more deeply than this article lets on. It's just, this is the position I've staked out for myself for whatever reason. A staffer wrote this thing, and fine. I'm done. That's it. But, well, I don't know. Maybe her academic background can be prevailed upon.
She has said,
yes,
privately to consultants, to fundraisers, to various Democratic types, that she really does think she can be the next John McCain.
All right.
She's doing all of this to be the maverick. But John McCain, in the end, became sort of legendary John McCain because he stood up to Mitch McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not because he handed over his vote to him.
Well,
it's
maybe they didn't cover that in her classes.
Deeply frustrating.
Well, that is too bad. Meanwhile, I would like to ask you about another of your more recent pieces, the CRA effort.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had read something last week, which I guess needs some correction, but I read something last week that said, hey, the deadline has passed and they're just not interested in doing this again. And then very shortly thereafter, I read, no, they're going to do something next week. So
yeah, and
I
don't know, not all of the deadlines have passed.
Okay.
Partly because the House has, the deadlines are counted with working days.
Oh boy.
There haven't been that many working days.
Okay.
As it turns out. That many legislative days.
I was going to say it makes sense.
In
It
Congress.
doesn't make sense. It explains it, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that extends the deadlines.
Huh. Okay, so that's...
But it's important that they didn't just come in with a wholesale knee-jerk CRAing of all of Trump's rules and regulations, because of when Newt Gingrich wrote this, he was very tricky.
Oh.
He wrote it so that to use the CRA, you are then disallowing the administration from going back and re-regulating that, revising those regulations. You pretty much just can't do what was in those regulations again.
Okay.
So it is
threat?
sort of a trap. Newt Gingrich being Newt Gingrich, and it was devised for Republicans, basically, in their anti-regulatory zeal, to be able to undo stuff that they don't like. The advantage in all of it is for Republicans as opposed to Democrats, because there isn't any nuance in it for Democrats to be able to revise regulations.
Yeah, okay.
It's just basically to undo them. And in this case, these were ones that needed to be undone and were fairly easily undone. The methane rule is just reinstating rules that were in place in the Obama administration that Trump rescinded. So it's rescinding Trump's rescission of the Obama methane rules.
All right. Yeah, that's...
And another that is disallowing the Office of the Comptroller of Currency to let sort of, I can't remember, pop-up banks? No, that's not what they call
them. That doesn't sound good.
Under this rule from Trump, regular banks, federally certified banks, can partner with like payday lenders.
Okay.
To make loans to people that are otherwise illegal under consumer law, that are predatory, because they are not the named banker, the banker of record in making these loans, and instead the predatory lender is, then the predatory lender can have exorbitant interest rates and terrible terms and all of these things that would otherwise be precluded by law. So it's sort of a sham setup for bankers to be able to make bad loans, essentially. So that they've rescinded that. And the other was for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It was set up in litigation, forcing the EEOC to provide essentially all of the documentation in its investigations to employers to fight discrimination claims. That includes the names of all of the complainants, all of the witnesses for those complainants, all of the documentation that could end up in retaliation against those people.
Okay.
So that was an easy one to get rid of too. So the three that the House is going to do away with this week are all very much needing to be done away with and easy to do away with.
Okay. So that's what
the others get more complicated. So, in some cases you've seen the administration rewrite regulations. In cases where they could, they've rescinded some. So you're seeing a lot of work in the administration on what it can do to limit the reach of those bad Trump regulations.
All right. So maybe the better...
The good news is it hasn't been ignored. I mean, we're sort of looking at this saying, use the CRA, use the CRA. Why aren't you using the CRA? It's just that they've been approaching it cautiously and carefully.
Okay. I mean, the other route, I guess, is the new administration can just promulgate new and different regulations. That's tedious and takes a long time, but maybe the safer route in the end, given that is an interesting thing. So if you rescind something through the CRA, it prevents the current administration, I guess, from addressing the area, the whole topic. That does sound like a weirdly crafted piece of legislation.
The kind of thing Newt Gingrich would do.
Right. So I guess it's only usable here when it says the regulation we're repealing is so bad that it itself is worse than having no regulation on this area. Or if there was previously existing regulation that a terrible president attempts to change or rescind by new regulation, if you say, well, we'll repeal that and then no president can touch the area, at least the status quo ante controls. Okay.
Right.
All right. Now I got it. That makes sense. And that explains why those three were selected. Those are just three areas that happen to have that peculiar combination of facts. That were okay. Well, thank you. That clears things up quite a bit.
Well, you are most welcome. That's what I'm here for on occasion.
Fantastic. Yeah. Usually it's just to say, God damn it. I hate everybody.
Yelling at,
and also
I mean,
Idaho.
I yell at Mansion, yell at Susan Collins, yell at Cinema.
Well, this was a good...
They made me very grumpy, Kagro.
Well, I thought then it was a wise idea to switch directions, and I really didn't want to know about this because we read this article that said they're not doing anything and they're lazy and they shouldn't have done it this way. And now we know what the reality was and what they were able to do and what they weren't. So now we can leave on an up note. That's always a good thing and a rare thing for our show.
Yes.
So, very good. Well, imagine that. So you've had a good day here. You finished the Kirsten Cinema thing. I think it's behind you, and we've been able to credit you with the explanation of a very strange and complicated and esoteric procedural question. Great. What a day. All right. We'll see what happens next week. Fantastic. Thank you for stopping by and doing all of that in such a short period of time. And
Thank you.
Talk again
next week.
Great. Take care, John.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Yes, it's true. That's what you've been doing, and I know what you're doing next. You're staying tuned for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. He's got all sorts of fantastic stories that I'm sure we had no time for today. Like, for instance, if Fox News was not a propaganda outfit lying to America, they would have fact-checked Tucker Carlson's claims about January 6th. Stay tuned.